Well, I guess you might say it started off more selfish than anything. I wanted to fly airplanes, and the Air Force seemed to be the best place to fly airplanes. Somebody reminded me that the Navy flew airplanes also, but I wasn't a very good swimmer, so I decided maybe I ought to stick with the Air Force. And at the time, I was going into ROTC at the University of Missouri, and was in Air Force ROTC, and just stayed in through the whole 4-year program that the Reserve Officers Training Corps had at that time. I went through Air Force ROTC, and I ended up as the Cadet Wing Commander here at the University of Missouri, and because I did well in that program, I had an opportunity to select time and place of my entry into the pilot training program. So I went into pilot training about a month after I graduated from the University of Missouri, received a commission as a second lieutenant and also a degree as a mechanical engineer. I did well in pilot training. Well, when I graduated from pilot training, of course, we went to survival training, and that played a part in my future experiences, of which I had no idea would occur at that time. When it really came home was when we got word about a year before our rotation in England was up, which was early, that we were probably going to be going to Vietnam. Well, Vietnam, Jesus. Oh, okay, maybe I better read up on Vietnam a little bit. So then that kind of playboy thing, flying neat airplanes and swashbuckling, started to come home. Like, okay, there's a reason for this. They gave us a list of those who were going to be rotating to Southeast Asia. It was almost the entire squadron. The only people that were staying were people that were short on career time. I mean, you know, might be retiring in a year or two. People whose wives were pregnant, and some other selected individuals. And my wife then was pregnant. And I thought, well, I guess that's a reason for me not to go. But then I got to thinking, then who's going to go? Because there are only so many of these RF-4 pilots in the world. They're all flying for the United States Air Force. And one of them is me. So who's going to take over this mission? Who's going to take these airplanes and do with them what we've trained to do? Well, then everything kind of started coming into place. 3.5 years I was missing in action, presumed killed, because the other airplane that we were flying with, we were a two-ship, flying line abreast, saw us take the hit, saw the ground fire, and they broke off. When they broke off, by the time they came back around, the airplane had already hit into the side of the mountain. 4 seconds from the time I started to eject until I opened, the parachute opened and I could see, and the airplane was a big ball of fire in the side of the mountain. I was transported to Hanoi. Well, you've heard of the Hanoi Hilton, the old wallow French prison there in Hanoi, and was interrogated. Interrogation was they weren't very cordial. Was not a very pleasant experience, and then they kept me isolated for 3 months, maybe 2 months, I don't know, quite a while. I was told I was the only bellicose one. I was the only one that wasn't understanding that I needed to ask the Vietnamese people for forgiveness and to write to the American peace movement and tell them that we were fighting a bad war and we were fighting it for the American imperialists and killing women and children and on and on. Well, hell, who do you think was going to put up with that? But according to him, or the interrogators, I was the only one who'd resisted this. And therefore, I would be taught to change my thinking. And then they brought in this thing I was supposed to wear. It was a red and purple striped, like pajamas. And red and purple striped, I've never heard of a prisoner uniform like that. This is what the guys wear that have been singled out for brainwashing. Until, for some interesting part of another story, set of events, I was able to look through a little bitty crack I didn't even know was in the door, and I saw the orneriest looking guy I'd ever seen. Charlie Green flew F-105s. He was one of my first roommates. Charlie Green just standing there in his blue and purple and red pajamas, just looked like a mafia hitman, just standing there. I mean, you know, he was getting the same brutal treatment I was. And so, well, that guy's a GI. And so I guess I'm not alone after all. That guy's only right there. I mean, just right across the hall. The hall's about as wide as this table. Looking through my door, there was his door. And so that gave me heart. 3.5 years later, they got a postcard. It said it was from me. And our various Department of Defense agencies were very anxious to read these postcards. So they gave it to handwriting experts. And keep in mind now that I'd been shot down for 3.5 years. There was no reason to believe that I was alive. The other air crew had seen the airplane fly right into the mountain, seen no parachutes, nobody eject. And here I showed up on a postcard. It was, okay, is this for real? So they were checking the handwriting analysis. And the postcard then was given back to the family with a statement. And after I got back, I got a chance to read the statement. And I can't tell you everything it said. It wasn't a wordy thing, but it said something to the effect that, to the best of our experts' analysis, this does indeed appear to be Captain Clark's writing. From this, we are able to discern that as of the date of this postcard, Captain Clark was alive. We do, however, believe he was somewhat stressed. Some guys were shot down 8 years before we were released. Some of us shot down 6 years before we were released. And then some of the guys were there only maybe a few months because they were part of the group that got us out. They were part of the B-52s, the B-66s, the F-4s, the 105s that flew missions over Hanoi and North Vietnam, just bombed the living crap out of them until they finally decided, hey, it's not worth hanging on to these guys for this. So then they went back to the negotiating table and negotiated our release. The other NAM POWs, we called ourselves NAM POWs, Vietnam POWs. I was closer to them. We were closer together, the fellows that lived together, than you would have ever been to a family member. What would it take for you to trust your life to someone? And that's what you're doing. And yet it seems to come so natural. You're out there, you're going to do the job that you're sent to do. You're either going to protect the guy that you're with. You're going to clear his six, if in flying lingo, perhaps. But he's going to do the same for you. And you work as a team. You had confidence in them, had confidence in their training. You had confidence in their patriotism. And these things changed but became more acute as my experiences went from pilot training to survival training to flying air medical evacuation transports, where we worked as a close-knit crew, to flying fighter type aircraft, where we flew as a flight, maybe a flight of two, maybe we just played as a flight of four. Of course, your fighters usually flew as a flight of four, to being a prisoner of war, which was a group that had to come very closely together to support each other in 6 years, sometimes as much as 8 years of very harsh circumstances, wherein your faith in them was one of the reasons why you were able to survive.